Hello ladies and gentle spoons. Welcome to a slightly different video today. Today I've seen countless videos on people speculating on what might be coming for Jurassic World Evolution 3, what creatures we might see, what mechanics. So I'm going to start a series of videos where we're going to discuss those aspects of the next game. So first off, what everyone wants to hear, the new creatures. Now, this is only bearing in mind this video the most requested new features and creatures, um, namely Paleozoic creatures, Cenozoic creatures, and semi-aquatic ones. There is another feature, a smaller feature that I personally want, but I haven't seen talked about much, that I might talk about in a later video, but we'll come back to that. But in hindsight, that feature I'm talking about may negatively affect like all of the speculation in this video because of what it entails. But that's not very relevant for this video, at least. Let's get into it. Alright, so a few weeks back, I put this video in motion and decided that I was going to do something a little different with how I would go about my wish list. Is I would try and be as realistic as possible, right? So the first thing I did is I looked into how many new species. I looked into how many new species were added in Jurassic World Evolution 2, and I came to the total of 20, right? 13 just in the base game that were completely new species. 4 that were in the deluxe edition, and 3 were canon species, so had a purpose to be added, right? Had a reason to be added. They wouldn't be missed out, basically, kind of thing. So if we look here, I have just realised I forgot to put Amberosaurus in the deluxe edition, but whatever. If we look here, these are how I categorized each of these species, right? So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 6 new land species, we got 7 aviary species, and 7 aquatic species. So that works out. It seems like there was a very clear idea to get a good amount of balance between new species added and a good amount of species added for both the new aviaries and the new aquatic mechanics. So, bearing that in mind, I took it upon myself to then assume that, like we saw there, where the aviaries and the aquatics had a large priority in terms of new species, we'd likely see the same with Cenozoic and semi-aquatic animals. Now, in the previous game, though, we did get introduced to Paleozoic creatures as well. So I personally would like to see the Paleozoic species expanded quite a bit. So I took it to have, as we saw there, 7 and 7 for the big new features or big new group of animals that hadn't been in before. And then 6 for the leftovers, right? And I split that equally between Paleozoic and Mesozoic, right? So, in terms of which is the most likely to actually come to the game and which is the most likely to actually, these predictions, this wish list to be held true, Mesozoic is by far the most, actual, most probable, right? I'd then say Paleozoic are following that, and then Cenozoic, because Cenozoic species don't require as much of, as many new features as semi-aquatic, I feel. As semi-aquatic species need a whole bunch of new systems to just function, whereas Cenozoic species, yes, are very different in many ways to the species we have already in Jurassic World Evolution 2, but at the same time are also functionally the same at the end of the day, if you think about it. So, So with that, we'll start with the simplest, the Mesozoic. So this is for I've created a number of, I suppose, wish lists. This is the 20 species roster. So assuming we get 20 species in the next game, like with Jurassic World Evolution 2. 20 new species. Some of these would be in the deluxe edition, of course, but that's neither here nor there. But so we only have 3 new Mesozoic species because of the reasons I've said. And now those are Plateosaurus, first off. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants a basal sauropodomorph. They've got a really unique morphology, not like anything else in the game. A bipedal herbivore that's not a theropod. So, completely distinct. More Triassic expansion, because everybody wants Triassic expansion as well. And, they're very unique, very interesting looking animal. Could probably have some quite interesting attack animations with its claws and whatnot. So, yeah, this is probably a basal sauropodomorph or prosauropod of some kind is probably the most obvious pick for the next game. If I had to put money on one dinosaur in all of this list coming to the next game, or one creature, I'd suggest this. There's 2 others that I think are also very likely, other than I guess Smilodon. So, but Plateosaurus is like, yeah, a fair bet, I think. Anyway, next up, this is another one where I think it's very likely to come to the game, is Microraptor, because we know that they may have been working, or at least were spitballing the idea thanks to some data, some data leaks, some data mining rather, with one of the previous updates for Jurassic World Evolution 2. I think it was the Cretaceous Predator pack, if memory serves. Now, I really want Microraptor. I'd be willing to exchange it for an Archaeopteryx, but I really want Microraptor because I would love to have a more avian creature in the aviaries. So to have some kind of bird or bird-like animal in the aviaries, properly fluttering around would be awesome. And this would be especially cool if they gave pterosaurs walking animations. And we had Microraptor, like hopping around like a little bird. Obviously, even better would be them having climbing animations, but that's probably less likely. But just seeing them hop around and glide and I believe they think Microraptor might have been somewhat capable of powered flight. So it'd be extremely unique, really awesome little creature to see, and it's one of my favorite dinosaurs. So I'd love to see it. Speaking of my favorite dinosaurs, probably the only other creature, at the very least non-aviary creature, just straight land-living dinosaur that I want to see from the Cretaceous. I would, if we only got this dinosaur and no other Cretaceous dinosaur, other than like a flying one, like a Microraptor or a natural bird, I'd be more than happy. If we never got another Cretaceous dinosaur again, I'd be fine with it. And that's Mononychus. I cannot understand how there is still no Alvarosaurid in the game. Like, I sort of get it because there's those other species that took its place. It could have been in the feathered species pack. They chose Sinosauropteryx. In the pack managers pack, there was other species chosen. In what you call it? What's the word? In the Cretaceous Predators pack? Yeah, no, in the Cretaceous Predators pack there was other species chosen as well. But like, in terms of like a staple dinosaur of Cretaceous ecosystems, the lack of an Alvarosaurid is like crazy to me. And yes, that's in part because they're one of my favourite groups of dinosaurs, and Mononicus itself is one of my favorite dinosaurs, but it's still it is like I need one, man. We've gone so long without one. We've got like a little over we've got Oviraptorids, we've got all these, we've got we've got all these other small little dinosaurs. But I need an Alvarosaurid, and they'd be so interesting because they give us a completely unique diet, most likely. Or at the very least, they could have very unique animations with their diet. Um, they're exceptionally unique looking. They're a great smaller dinosaur to have as this little nimble running around, and also they're a group that, as I say, they feel like they complete a lot of like the ecosystems we have in the Cretaceous. You know what I mean? And especially our Asian ones. So like if you were doing a Site B or a big enclosure based around a certain dig site or whatnot, like the Alvarosauros are the guys that I'm missing. Like we've got Oviraptors, we've got Pachycephalosaurs, we've got all these guys, but where are the Oviraptors? I mean not Oviraptors, the Alvarosaurids. Such a unique little dinosaurs, and I think they are sorely missed in the game. I think so. Yeah. So yeah, put it in the game because it's fucking dupe. Anyway, now with the three new Paleozoic species. So that's it for the dinosaurs. Is the Paleozoic species now. First off, the one everyone wants. I think this is honestly a safe bet. I'd say Plateosaurus, Microraptor, and Innostrancevia are the safest bets in terms of what is going to come to the next game, and maybe Smilodon. I'd say those are the safest bets that aren't canon species. Now, I desperately want a Mononicus. It would be mind-boggling if Mononicus doesn't at least, or an Alvarosaurid of some kind, doesn't at least come in a DLC. For example, like it'd suit perfectly for an Asia DLC as well. Because another very much requested species is Protoceratops. Makes sense. And in that DLC, you could also add a mammal. For good example, I think it was in a video I watched recently. They suggested Paraceratherium could come in that if it didn't come in the base. That makes perfect sense as well. Um, so yeah, but Innostrancevia, the classic Gorgonopsid, it's awesome, awesome creature. Especially if you had, you know, it's sort of copycat of its saber-tooth Smilodon, alongside it. Be amazing, be a brilliant creature. You know, we're getting more and more of our we got more and more of our Walking with Dinosaurs roster. We got into the Walking with Beasts and Walking with Monsters rosters. You know what I mean? And then maybe eventually Primeval rosters. We'll get back to that. But I've put here Innostrancevia or either alongside it or replacing it. I'd love to see one of the large predatory Dinocephalians. So that's either like Uranteosaurus or personally prefer Setanophonius because I think it's got a more interesting like morphology. It's like a hellhound mixed with a Komodo dragon is what I think they look like, which I think is very cool. So um, that'd be great, and also just be great to have another Synapsid as well. So moving on now. Probably one of the marine creatures I want the most is a sea scorpion, and especially if we got um, semi-aquatics. Now, realistically, these probably don't need to be fully semi-aquatic. These could still just use, even if semi-aquatics were added, I'd be fine with these guys still just using the rock platforms, or like a beach like thing or something like that, or beach like equivalent of the rock platform, for example. Because realistically, these guys wouldn't have come on land that often. It's like how I think the Archelon doesn't need to be fully semi-aquatic. It just because it's a giant turtle, it wouldn't do that. It would only come on land to either rest or what you call it, um, lay eggs or whatnot. But Jacalopterus is awesome. It's a giant. giant Eurypterid, longer than a man is tall. Now, just if they did add um like interactions between land and aquatic creatures and whatnot, I mean it'd be pretty bloody awesome to see a giant sea scorpion like pluck a compy off of the thing, or watch one attack a person off of the off the out as if it breached out of the water or clambered on land to get one or something. That'd be pretty bloody awesome. So yeah. Um, but even if it wasn't, it'd be a really interesting creature, especially if it was also able to feed more on the ground of your lagoons and whatnot. Be really interesting. So yeah. It could be it would be really unique, completely like nothing else in game. There's no arthropods, you know what I mean? So it'd be awesome. Now next up, for my Paleozoic creatures is now I don't think this is very likely. I think if you were going to have 3 new Paleozoic creatures in the game, um, you'd have something like Scutosaurus to go alongside your Inestronsevier. It's also just another very iconic species. Something like Edaphosaurus, another very iconic species. Um, Another a large fish like Helicoprion, Rhizodus, Hyneria, something like Stephacanthus, something like that. But I love Silarus. It's a really cool creature. I think having a gliding creature in the aviaries could be really interesting, especially if they were able to climb and um and 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 actually run on the ground and stuff. Um, it'd be again ridiculously unique, like nothing else in game. Now it could also be a creature exclusive to an idea I had for a new feature that I would hope isn't the big feature, but is more of a just of an innovation, as they called it, as Frontier called it. If they were to, you know, take the existing system for amenities and whatnot, and make them and attractions, and make them even more configurable to the point where you may you can make like a rest area, or you can make a bar or a restaurant like you can now, or an attraction like an aquarium. And now you can do that in the game, but you can't configure it. You can't do anything with it. But if they took that and made it more similar to something like how either the small enclosures work in Prehistoric Kingdom or Planet Zoo, that would be amazing. If you had the option to go to make an attraction building, and you had the options of making that attraction building into an aquarium, a cinema, um, a like you can now, a bowling alley like you can now, or a reptile house, or something like that, or a smaller aviary for like creatures like Microraptor or not. You could even have it where you have it be an optional enclosure for animals like compies and whatnot. And now this is a bit more of a stretch, but it could be interesting. You could have it so certain creatures like compies could transition between the two. They could have a compartment that maybe they go in, they disappear and then come out the other end, and they say it's in that is it despawns the creature and it transitions into the mobile, the outside version, right? So I think that's pretty feasible considering. I mean, that would be pretty similar to how the hatcheries work. They go from a set building, doing an animation within that building, to then out in the open. So now I wouldn't expect that to work for animals like Silarus, but just animals where it would work like that. It could do that kind of thing. But that's just an idea I had. That was an idea I had that's I've sort of thought about, where it'd be a really cool way to house our smaller animals and even smaller animals than we already have in unique, a more suitable way than we already have in the game. And this would work perfectly for animal like Cerberus, and so I could have my Rex from Primeval. Be awesome. And even with the smaller creatures, you could see your guests handling them, having animations inside the building and whatnot. Um, so yeah. But anyway, on to the 7 new Cenozoic species. So uh, my thinking is with these is I think if we were to get Cenozoic and semi-aquatic animals, we would get a lot of them. We would get a lot of them at base to sort of justify their existence, right? Which is like the aviaries and the aquatics. We got a fair few at the upon in the base roster of Jurassic World Evolution 2. And Cenozoic specifically I think they need that because otherwise they'll look very out of place. First pick, obviously Smilodon. It's if we get Cenozoics, we're getting Smilodon. It's very clear because it's the only canon Cenozoic. In reality, I have just realised I haven't listed it here, but another Cenozoic animal I could see as very likely getting is a dwarf species of elephant, because in the books, I'm pretty sure it's the first animal they cloned is a species of pygmy elephant. So I haven't got that here, but I could see them doing that, which would be interesting, and would logically replace could take the place of a creature that I've put in later. So, but Smilodon, I've used this picture here from Primeval because now Frontier usually do their own skin for canonical creatures, right? From like the movies and from the newer movies and well, for Dominion and Camp Cretaceous. So if they were to do the same here, I'd love to see them give the Smilodon a skin where it is very much like a clouded leopard, like this, or like a jaguar, where it's the mix between stripes and spots. Because I think this is it's just it's my favorite depiction. Anyway, I didn't mean to do that, but anyway, the next most obvious pick is woolly mammoth. It's a it's obvious. It's going to be if again um if Cenozoics are brought in and there's more than one of them in form of Smilodon, you're going to have woolly mammoth. You might not have woolly mammoth. It could be, I guess, Columbian mammoth, but realistically, it would probably be woolly mammoth, and that's great. They're brilliant animals. It could be awesome. Um, I'd hope they'd have a lot of great social animations. I'm hoping we see a bit more complexity. Maybe each species has a couple of social animations. Breeding with these, I should rephrase that. These guys, they're breeding, they're young, would be brilliant. So, yeah. The next most likely species I think to come for Cenozoic animals is a terror bird. It's probably Titanus. It's the most, I suppose, well-known terror bird, I feel. Um, and whilst I think there are species like giant ground sloths, things like that, woolly rhinos, that are more famous overall, I think in terms of what the fan base and the community wants, I feel like a terror bird is probably the most requested Cenozoic creature. I think maybe it's probably tied with a ground sloth, but I feel like people want a terror bird because the idea is that it also just fits with the other dinosaurs, and also people love terror birds. Terror birds are freaking awesome. So it's definitely one at the top of my list of creatures I want. Next up though is another bird. I think having I think it would be so cool to have aviary representation from the Cenozoic as well. And what better to do that with than with Argentavis, the largest flying bird of all time. It's it's an obvious pick. Its interactions with pterosaurs could be awesome. Its interactions with people could be amazing. Not sure how accurate that is or realistic that is. I mean, they were huge, and I mean, there's the little pterosaurs in the game attack people. So, and Argentavis I now think was an active predator. So realistically, it probably could prey on a person if it really wanted to. But it'd be really cool. Completely unique mobility to the pterosaurs in the game. Because obviously it's bipedal, and again, hopefully it'd be able to walk around. Um, but yeah, no, it'd be super cool, super unique. Just a terror of the skies, a Terraton, which is of course what the group it's a part of. Next up, we've got Paraceratherium. Now, I was thinking about this after I put it in. I probably would prefer. This is where I put another medium to large herbivore. I probably would prefer another species because I was thinking that there could be a point where there's too much crossover with Prehistoric Kingdom, and I think Prehistoric Kingdom already has such a perfect looking Paraceratherium that, like, do you really also need it in Jurassic World Evolution? You know what I mean? Now, would Paraceratherium probably be brilliant in Jurassic World Evolution? Yeah, probably. Would Frontier probably do it justice? Yeah, again, probably. But I think in terms of, I think you do need another like mammalian herbivore. Um, and I think a decently sizable one. But so I think there's a few other options. So I think again, woolly rhino, the giant ground sloths. I think those are very obvious picks. But honestly, I think I'd probably prefer the other three I have listed here more than them. I think Megalosaurus would be such a unique, really striking, really majestic creature to have in the game. Chalicothea is a really weird. So is like Doedicurus. They're both very weird creatures. They'd both be exceptionally unique. Nothing like anything in the game. Not even comparable. Not even similar to the other mammals. Um, I think out of all these, I want the Chalicothea the most because they're just so odd. But the Megalosaurus is a close second because I think it'd just be so awesome to see, and not to mention it'd be really cool for it to see it fighting off dinosaurs and but also just getting hunted by dinosaurs and whatnot. So yeah, I think Megalosaurus would be really cool. So yeah, and then for another mammalian carnivore, my choice is Daedon. Now there's plenty of other mammalian carnivores you could choose here. Um, you know, Hyenodon, Andrewsarchus, there's all sorts. But I think an Entelodon, the biggest Entelodon, Daedon, I think would be really cool. I think it's very very much distinct from the other mammalian carnivore you'd have Smilodon. Um, and I think it'd be super unique, super cool. And again, just the idea of watching it fight dinosaurs and stuff sounds awesome. Chasing down guests and whatnot would be brilliant. But yeah, could have some really interesting social interactions. Fighting amongst themselves and whatnot. Because obviously we know they did that. We know they were very violent towards one another because of the facial scarring they have. Um, Next up, we have Eohippus. Now, I want this for two reasons. One, or three reasons. One, I think having a small Cenozoic animal would be really important because it'd be like the equivalent of our Homalocephali, our Oviraptor, etc. Um, I think it fills an important niche, right? Um, Secondly, I think my list has been quite carnivore focused when it comes to Cenozoic, so I think just having another you've got. I think what you'd want is you'd want your big herbivore, your mammoth, your Paraceratherium, etc. Then you'd want your medium-sized herbivore, your Chalicothea, your Megalosaurus, your I suppose rhinos are still pretty huge, but you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And then you'd want your smaller herbivore, your Eohippus, your anywhere from I guess anywhere from like Eohippus to like prehistoric camel size. You know what I mean? Something that's like not exceptionally large compared to modern mammals, but it's still a very unique and interesting animal. Um, so yeah. But the other reason I want Eohippus is so I can recreate Guanji, because the Eohippus in that is probably one of the most beautiful special effects in any film ever. I think if you haven't seen it, there's a tiny little horse in the Valley of the Guanji, and it's a really really cool effect. Really brilliant stop motion model. It looks just straight up like a real tiny little horse. It's brilliant. So yeah, but I'd love Eohippus. It'd be brilliant. As I say, it'd be like a homalocephaly of the Cenozoic. It'd be really interesting, really unique animal. Could have some adorable animations. Now I could see this being. This is probably the most unlikely. It is. It's a bit obscure. It's probably not like what people think of like the most like striking um animal from the Cenozoic. But I really like it. So yeah. Next up we've got our 7 new semi-aquatic creatures. Now I think the Cenozoics will take priority over these, so I think we could get less than 7 here. Um, and I doubt more than 7 Cenozoics, but it's possible. I mean, it's not impossible. So yeah, I think you could trade off 2 semi-aquatics for 2 Cenozoics, because there's already semi-aquatic creatures in the game. Technically, they're just not semi-aquatic yet. You know what I mean? Spinosaurus, Nophosaurus, etc. So you don't need to pad it out as much, because you can just give these existing creatures that feature. But anyway, the obvious pick for a Cenozoic, not Cenozoic, semi-aquatic species would be Sarcosuchus or Deinosuchus. Personally, I think I'd prefer Deinosuchus, because I think it's more of, to me it's more of the dinosaur eater. It's got more of its anatomy suggests that more. It's got more, and obviously you'd want Deinosuchus to be lunging out of the water, jumping prey. Um, Sarcosuchus would be awesome, because Sarcosuchus does a very unique look, but I think I'd prefer Deinosuchus, because yeah, it's the classic dino eating croc. So, but I think it would be brilliant. Next up, we've got Hesperornis. I think I do like my birds, but at the same time, I think they'd be such a unique group of animals to finally have in the game. Hesperornis having a marine bird, having a staple of the diets of animals like Mosasaurus and Tylosaurus, uh, especially if they have added Siphaxtinus as well. Um, the X-fish, as Thingy calls it. So, but Hesperornis would be awesome. These birds darting around, going onto land, then going onto the rock platform. They'd be awesome. They'd be really unique, really interesting little creatures. So yeah. Next up, we've got Tanystropheus. Now, I'd love to see Tanystropheus both be able to hunt on land and water, because it may have done that. But again, it's a very odd Triassic creature. People want more Triassic expansion. I personally want some of the oddities of the Triassic. Tanystropheus is one of the more famous weird Triassic animals. Be super unique, be really interesting, and it's just they're brilliant. So I'd absolutely love one of them. Next up, we've got Ichthyovenator, which I realise I said I wouldn't want any more Cretaceous theropods, but um, I think a new Spinosaur would work really well, and especially a more accurate looking Spinosaur would work really well for the new semi-aquatic features. Ichthyovenator, Ichthyovenator or Irritator, both of them have very unique looks to them, with Irritator with the very unique jaw, that's very pelican-like, and then Ichthyovenator with the sails and the ridges and whatnot. Um, both would be brilliant. I think maybe Ichthynova would make a bit more sense as a semi-aquatic animal. So yeah. Um, but yeah, both would be really cool. Um, especially if like they were specifically a bit more adept in the water than the current Spinosaurids. So yeah, it'd be a very welcomed addition. Next up, this one I find unlikely. I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be brilliant. And I do definitely want it, and the community wants it. But the complexity of it, the complexity of the animations, especially if it was, using this new feature of going on land in water, all the interactions it would need to have with other creatures, stuff like that. I would absolutely love a Titanoboa, and that's why it's here. But I don't know how likely it is. So, yeah, it'd be brilliant though. But yeah, next up, someone that I actually find a lot more likely. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised, having made this list. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we were getting semi-aquatics, if we got more than one giant amphibian labyrinthodon. It's just that I think the most likely is Koolasuchus, because it's probably the most iconic. It's it's one of the last. It's the dinosaur eating one. It's it's the one most well known for that. It's got a really unique look to it, and yeah, I think it'd just be a really cool, creature to have in the game. So yeah, not much to say about it. It's just the bloody cool giant tadpole monster. So yeah, I suppose the one thing I would say is with that, I'd love to see freshwater lagoons, or that kind of thing, be an option for creatures like that. So yeah. Similarly, Ambulocetus. Now, I was thinking, I'm not sure they'll want like whales to be in the actual lagoons and stuff, because obviously that's a controversial topic. They haven't done that in Planet Zoo for that reason and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how likely it would for them to get like Basilosaurus and stuff, or like Leviathan. But I'm kind of okay with that, because I think it'd be a lot more interesting to have, land whales instead, creatures like Ambulocetus, Pachycetus, stuff like that. These basically pseudo-crocodilian otter whale things. I think that'd be a really, really interesting animal to have in the waters, but yeah. But what if we only get 15 creatures? Now, as Evolution Square speculated, which makes sense in case in case we do get these big features and they take development resources and time. So I've reduced it here. I've kept my Mesozoic, but I've reduced the Paleozoic a lot. Well, I've reduced it by one actually. Yeah. I've taken what is it? I think I've taken one off of. Yeah, I took Daedon off, didn't I? Yeah. Of the Cenozoic. But I think but as you can see, I think Cenozoics would still be the biggest group of the new species, because again, you need a large amount to justify their existence, basically. And then you'd also have quite a few semi-aquatics, again, to basically justify their existence. So yeah. Now, I forgot about that. If there was less of them, I'd be very willing to switch out Ambulocetus for a giant penguin. I just thought I think it'd be cool. So yeah. But then you've got you had your previous wish, like the previous 20, which is if they kept to the 7 new Cenozoics, 7 new aquatics, like they did 7 new aviaries, 7 new aquatics. I meant to say semi-aquatics, but whatever. But what if they didn't do that? Well, I'd give us 1 more Mesozoic animal and 2 more Paleozoic animals, because I want them. So this is my ideal species wish list, right? So you've got all the same. You've got Platysaurus, Microraptor, Mononicus, Innistronsevia, Jackalopterus, Silarus, My Little Bully, Titanus, Argentavis, Eohippus, they're all the same. Dinosuchus, Hesperornis, Tanistropheus, Coolosuchus, they're all the same. They're all similar. I realise here I've put Ambulocetus, but I probably would want Coolosuchus more than Ambulocetus, but whatever. I think it works better here to give us an extra mammal, because obviously we dropped a mammal. Actually, we dropped 2 mammals actually. So yeah. No, wait. No, we dropped a mammal. Anyway. But as you can see, there's 3 new creatures, right? There's a few creatures gone. There's 3 new creatures added. So first off, wait. Some other ideas for a creature we've got already. In case we didn't want Jackalopterus, maybe you want a more terrestrial one in the form of Brontoscorpio. I also just think Brontoscorpio looks bloody awesome, so I like it. Pterygotus because it's more famous, and Megalograptus because it's got a very unique appearance. It's got this weird thing on its tail, and it's got these appendages. It's pretty cool. But next up as new additions, we've got Camarasaurus. I've always thought a giant cephalopod, especially a shelled one, would be really bloody cool in the game. But, nothing like it at all. They're absolutely gargantuan. They're bizarre, wonderful creatures. So yeah, and it's then the staples of the Paleozoic, aren't they? So yeah, makes perfect sense. But next up, we've got to go along with Innistronsevia. We've got Scutosaurus. I adore Mark Whitten's art, by the way. That's why I'm pretty sure I've used it like 4 times in this video alone. But yeah, Scutosaurus, another staple of the Permian, really unique creature. Not a synapsid, a reptile from the Permian, which makes it a bit more of its own thing compared to other creatures. Though I realised I said Silarus, which is also a reptile, but that's beside the point. But yeah, it's just I think it's just people mostly think Permian mammal like reptile. But yeah, anyway, even though they're not called that anymore. But anyway. But yeah, Scutosaurus, awesome creature. Goes hand in hand with an Innistronsevia. It's its rival, it's its prey item. Makes perfect sense. It's not only interesting by itself, but again, it goes perfectly with Innistronsevia. And as you saw, there was a new creature in the Mesozoic, and that is the necessary Triassic oddity. We need some kind of weirdo from the Triassic, because we need just Triassic creatures in general, because that's not enough. But that's a crazy looking depiction of that pterosaur. Anyway, we need a We need a weirdo from the Triassic, because there isn't any in the game. Like Nophosaurus is sort of weird, but it's not really. It's just like a proto-plesiosaur. So we need some weirdos. So we've got a whole list. Now my top pick for weirdos is Charizardopteryx, because it's awesome, and now either they'd add gliding, or it'd flap its legs like a bird. Now I don't think they do that, but they should. I just like it. But then other options for our Triassic beasties are Phaseolasuchus, this gargantuan relative of crocodiles. The more famous Postosuchus, a smaller relative but still very large, still very intimidating creature. Erythrosuchus, a apex predator of its time, also quite large, but weird, with a gargantuan head. Lysowisia, which is another Dinosaur alongside Lystrosaurus, but elephant-sized. So that would be very interesting to see. And then for another aquatic animal, or another semi-aquatic animal, Atopodentatus, which is this weird shoe-build reptile, I guess. So yeah. And then Poposaurus, which is again a crocline relative, but it's sort of built like a raptor, but a croc. So I'm very much a fan of them. So something like this, I think, is absolutely another necessary creature for the game, for the next game. Probably as much as I'd love it to be Sharaviptrix, probably not Sharaviptrix. I think out of all these Postasukas is the most likely because it's the most well known. But I think I probably want out of all of them, other than Sharaviptrix, probably Pulposaurus the most because Pulposaurus is just cool. I just like it. It's very cool looking, very interesting, unique looking creature. Side note: if they added gliding, Dimetrodon should be able to do this. That's about it. Anyway, but then you have my ideal. So this is my complete ideal wish list. As you can see, we've now got the Sharaviptrix, or one of its brethren form of weirdness, Camarasaurus and Scutosaurus. So there you go. And then my ideal wish list for if we only get the 15 creatures, as you can see, we drop Chalicotherium, we drop all of the creatures I just told you about, except the Triassic Weirder. So we drop the Camarasaurus, the Scutosaurus, the Silurosaurus, but we keep Sharaviptrix. We keep most of our semi-aquatics, most of our Cenozoics, because I feel like they need to be there to basically justify their own existence. But yeah, we also lost Daeodon in the thing. So yeah. There you go. And in terms of like the ranking of which I think is the most likely, I think the 15 I think the I'm supposed to say 20. Anyway, I think the 15 in the Jurassic World Evolution 2's new species format. So where you had the 7 in each, you had you had 7 in each of the categories that were new. You know what I mean? So in that there were 7 new aviary creatures, there were 7 new marine creatures. In this one, there'd be 7 semi-aquatic creatures and 7 Cenozoic creatures. Next up would be my ideal format because I just think, it's more likely that we get a reduction in the numbers, and I think some of my ideal creatures are just a bit unlikely. But I think so. Then I think the 20 in the original format is more likely, and the 15. I mean, the 20 in my ideal format is obviously the least likely. It's basically just a complete, ideal best case scenario, perfect for me specifically. But I'd love to see what you all think about this in the comments. That'd be really interesting. What's your wish list? I'm gonna do some more videos around speculating about the next game, about what could be in it. So keep a lookout for them. And thanks for watching.